Egypt expresses its profound concern over the escalating reports of famine in the Gaza Strip. Families of the Israeli detainees call on Trump to order Netanyahu to end the war. And Ukraine's president affirms he would not cede any territory to Russia.
والله العظيم ولا حبة رز، والله العظيم ولا حبة عدس. ما فيش أكل، ما فيش شرب، عندي بنت 2.5 صارت تطلع.
Hello, good evening and welcome to our bulletin this evening. Egypt has expressed its profound concern over the escalating reports of famine in the Gaza Strip, officially confirmed by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry stated that these conditions are a direct result of Israel's war and its crimes against civilians. Egypt called on the international community to decisively intervene and end the violations, which include Israeli restrictions on humanitarian and food aid. The ministry emphasized the urgent need for a ceasefire to address the humanitarian crisis and praised UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres for calling the famine a man-made disaster for which Israel bears direct responsibility under international law. Amid Gaza's ongoing suffering, Egypt emerges as the lifeline, delivering aid, healing the wounded, and mobilizing nationwide efforts to sustain hope for Palestinians. Now, families of the Israeli detainees in Gaza have called on US President Donald Trump to order Netanyahu to end the war, asserting that Netanyahu is imposing an endless war on them in Gaza. They added that Netanyahu is sending their sons to die in Gaza in a war that has already achieved its objectives, explaining that occupying Gaza would mean sabotaging negotiations and causing the death of the detainees. They stress that there are only a few days left to stop the war from escalating further. The Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom, announced that more than 15,600 people in the Gaza Strip, including 3,800 children, are in need of medical evacuation to receive specialized care. In a post on the platform X, he called for an increasing pace of evacuations from Gaza and facilitating the delivery of aid in order to save lives and provide necessary care. He reiterated his call for a ceasefire in the Strip. The Palestinian Ministry of Health has announced that 8 new deaths, including 2 children, were recorded over the past 24 hours due to famine and malnutrition in the Gaza Strip. The ministry stated that this brings the total number of famine victims to 281, including 114 children. It also stressed that the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to worsen amid the blockade and the shortage of food and medical supplies, renewing its call on the international community and relief organizations to urgently and immediately intervene. Egypt has long played a central role in the Palestinian cause, from the earliest days of the conflict to the current war in Gaza. Cairo has worked to secure peace, deliver aid, and defend the rights of the Palestinian people. This report looks at Egypt's efforts, its challenges, and its unwavering stance on the path to justice.
Since the earliest days of the Palestinian struggle, Egypt has stood firmly with its people, working tirelessly to support their pursuit of freedom and justice. Then came October 7th of 2023, a day that reshaped the history of the region. In the aftermath, Egypt took the lead on the political stage, striving to broker a ceasefire in Gaza and to ease the suffering of people who now face famine and devastation under relentless occupation. From the first day of this war, Egypt has sought to de-escalate. It launched an intensive series of meetings and negotiations, removing obstacles to secure a truce and open the way for humanitarian aid. In cooperation with Qatar and the United States, Egypt succeeded in brokering 2 temporary ceasefires, affirming once again its role as a guarantor of regional stability. Yet Israeli intransigence has blocked every attempt at lasting peace. Most recently, Egypt proposed a 60-day halt to the fighting, a chance for Palestinians to breathe, mourn, and begin to heal. As before, the proposal was rejected, but Egypt did not and will not stop. Egypt is not merely a mediator, it is the guardian of the Palestinian cause, a responsibility it has carried since the Balfour Declaration. Today, as famine deepens and the humanitarian crisis grows, Egypt draws on its history, its geography, and its influence to rally international support for a complete end to the war in Gaza. To those who underestimate its role, remember this: Egypt has never abandoned its brothers, and it never will. As the poet of the Nile, Hafiz Ibrahim, once wrote, وقف الخلق ينظرون جميعا كيف أبني قواعد المجد وحدي.
And he's safe with that report there. UN agencies have mobilized officials at various levels to urge the international community to take immediate action to stop the starvation and war in Gaza. The UN agencies stress the need for swift and concrete measures, including a ceasefire and the delivery of aid. The United Nations and its relevant agencies also took part in preparing the analysis that officially declared famine in Gaza. UNRWA has called on Israel to immediately allow the entry of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, stressing that its warehouses in Jordan and Egypt are stocked with essential supplies sufficient to fill 6,000 trucks. The agency stated that the famine can be stopped by reversing the ongoing catastrophe and flooding the Strip with massive UN aid. following the United Nations official declaration of famine in Gaza. It's the first of its kind in the Middle East.
La force de pouvoir se déplacer.
Now, Egypt under President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has been at the forefront of humanitarian efforts for Gaza, keeping the Rafah border crossing perpetually open on its side and delivering the largest share of aid throughout the crisis.
معبر الرفح مفتوح على مدار ال 24 ساعة في السبعة أيام في ال30 يوم.
From the very first days of the Israeli aggression on October 7th, 2023, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has moved swiftly. In a statement at the Long Live Egypt and Palestine conference on 23rd of November 2023, he affirmed that
كان القرار باستمرار فتح معبر رفح البري لتدفق المساعدات الغذائية والطبية والوقود.
Driven by the directives and compassionate leadership of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Egypt has become the largest single contributor of aid to Gaza. President el-Sisi has repeatedly stressed that Egypt remains committed to humanitarian relief. Approximately 80% of all aid entering Gaza is provided by Egyptian entities.
قال كلام كتير على إن مصر هي السبب. لا.
Egypt has repeatedly coordinated agreements with UN agencies, including UNRWA, as well as the Palestinian Red Crescent, to ensure supplies enter Gaza safely and under supervision. In April 2024 alone, nearly 20 tons of medical supplies, 10 tons of fuel, and 123 tons of food, and 26 tons of water, along with ambulances and tents, crossed via Rafah. Under Egypt's humanitarian initiative, Egypt has facilitated the flow of aid by air and land, transported thousands of injured Palestinians to Egyptian hospitals, established field hospitals in Gaza, and helped vaccinate children.
وكذا استقبال الجرحى والمصابين على الرغم من ضراوة وشدة القتال، إلا أننا حافظنا على استمرار فتح المعابر.
President el-Sisi announced that Gaza typically requires between 600 and 700 truckloads of aid daily, and Egypt has worked tirelessly to facilitate as much of that as conditions allow. From air to land, Egypt's humanitarian outreach extends across multiple fronts. The country coordinated airdrops of food and relief supplies over northern Gaza in collaboration with friendly states, ensuring aid reached areas inaccessible by road.
Our video there showing what a big job it is to get aid to the people in Gaza. Now let's go across to our newsroom where Rana is there for us. Rana?
Thank you very much, Mark. And for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by the former Assistant Foreign Minister, Ambassador Dr. Mohammed Hijazi. Welcome to Qnews, sir. Sir, how would you evaluate Egypt's efforts to broker a Gaza ceasefire and facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid?
Well, I think our effort is of a multi-dimension. We are working with our regional brothers like Saudi Arabia to further pressure the regional and international power and the UN institutions to move towards facilitating aid to Gaza. At the same time, we all shocked by the announcement and the statement by the UN Health Relief that has identified Gaza as a hunger strike region, and this is the first time in the Middle East that something like this happened. This atrocity and crime against humanity shouldn't continue, and we are relentlessly trying to enter Gaza, but the blocked.
You're referring, sir, to the announcement and statement that was made by Antonio Guterres?
Yes, by the UN agent in charge of humanitarian assistance and by the international community and the World Health Organization, that Gaza is a hunger-stricken region, and this is the first time in the life of the Middle East, while 100 meters away lies all the possible support and aid, being it medical or food. The Israelis are going very far, and I think the American silence is in itself a kind of support to the Israeli engineering of hunger to pressure the people to evacuate their places. And again, while Hamas has accepted the proposition made by Egypt, which is based on Steve Witkoff's proposition that Israel has accepted earlier, one can really wonder for how long will the international community tolerate this crime that accuses us all in our dignity and our principles, our international adherence to law and legality. This is an issue that might drive me, Rana, to suggest that a pressure should be made on the International Court of Justice, either to announce the resume of its deliberations towards accusing Israel of genocide, or at least issue precautionary measures similar to what has issued and ignored by Israel, the renewal of the deliberation of the International Court of Justice will put great pressure on the government of Israel, who have led their country to being in the low level of humanity, a low level of respect to international law, and I think the complicity of the United States in letting Israel do whatever it does is again another crime against humanity. The perpetrator and the complice both are accused by international law, and I think many names should be put on the list and advanced to the International Court of Justice. This is one. Two, I think we need to consider a sanction regime, not declaration by states. Of course, we appreciate what, for example, the Sovereign Fund of Norway did, and many other countries in terms of banning Israeli arms supply. But we have to institutionalize a sanction regime similar to what we imposed on South Africa. And still, the anti-apartheid committee that imposed sanctions on South Africa is still working in the United Nations structure. So we don't need to create a new mechanism, because as you may recall, Rana, in July 2024, the International Court of Justice issued its verdict by accusing the occupation and the settler of being an apartheid regime. So we have to punish this apartheid regime in a systematic way. And I think the forthcoming conference or the forthcoming session of the General Assembly in New York in September is a good venue, not only to recognize, as it is predicted, that 18 countries will recognize the state of Palestine, but we have also to give this activity peace or power. We have to empower the two-state solution statement that issued in New York by introducing sanction regime, at least against Israel, and moved on, as we did with the apartheid, when Nelson Mandela said that the sanction regime put to the knees the apartheid regime.
Got your point, sir, and we leave it there, because at the point of when it comes to discuss sanctions, there are many countries that discussed that there has to be sanctions, but the answer was no. And some prime ministers, unfortunately, were resigned because of this reason, which were very strong prime ministers. Besides providing aid, sir, what concrete steps do you think the international community should take to confront the man-made disaster of famine in Gaza, as stated by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres?
I mean, the announcement of Guterres shouldn't stay here. We have to take the matter to the Security Council. Yes, of course, the Security Council. Yes, of course, we should expect the United States to issue a statement, but we have to maybe confine this resolution to the mere fact of opening gates to supply of food to confront hunger. If the United States did veto a mere line, one line only in this statement, saying that opening doors to assistance to confront hunger. We don't need to talk about politics or ceasefire. We need only to talk about the report and the hunger that is striking Gaza, and to confront it with just one line resolution. I don't think the United States will dare using the veto, otherwise it will be driven to the court as a complicit who prevented the world community from confronting the hunger that is striking Gaza Strip. This is, I think, a very important move. But back again, Rana, to your comment, sorry for interrupting you. Back again to the comment that you said about sanctions, that they said no. Who said no? The important thing is that we continue. Sanction is not a matter of a day and a night. Sanction is a process. You establish it, and
no, the countries, sir, there are countries that suggested just that sanctions should be a way to solve the situation. They were, of course, scolded, and the prime ministers were actually resigned, and this happened with Casper, sir.
Yes, you said that about Netherlands. Yes, it happened in Netherlands, precisely. But we don't stop here, because there is some voices here. Remember Germany? At the early stage, Germany's position was 100% in favor of Israel. Look at Germany's position now. Look at the statement of the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister of Germany in regards to what Israel is doing. There is a change, and we have to keep pressuring. This is a temporary government in Holland. It doesn't stay. And the matter is, if there is a resistance today, tomorrow there is an opening. When we talked about the sanction regime against South Africa apartheid regime, there were many resistance. The US, the UK, the Europe in general with that.
Dr. Mohammed Hagazi, I'm very sorry I'm out of time, and we all hope that Israeli occupation of the Gaza Strip is very possible and is very near in the very near future, hopefully, sir. That was Ambassador Dr. Mohammed Hagazi from Cairo, the former Assistant Foreign Minister. Thank you very much for joining us on Qnews, and thank you very much for your fruitful time and intellectual knowledge, sir. And now we move back to Mark Summers in our studios. Mark.
Thank you very much, Rana. Thank you indeed. Now moving on to Cairo, where Egypt has welcomed the UN Special Envoy's roadmap for resolving the Libyan crisis, which includes forming a temporary government to prepare for elections within 12 to 18 months. In a statement, Egypt's foreign ministry emphasized the importance of adhering to this timeline to ensure a credible political process that meets the Libyan people's aspirations for stability and development. Egypt reaffirmed its full support for UN efforts to restore security, stability and unity in Libya.
We're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death.
So to Iran, and Abdullah Haji Sadeghi, the representative of Iran's supreme leader, affirmed that the Strait of Hormuz is under Iranian control based on international agreements. He added that if there are threats against the country's interests, Iran may impose restrictions on the passage of hostile ships through this strategic waterway. He stressed that Iran will use all available means to guarantee national security, including imposing navigation restrictions in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has hinted at the possibility of withdrawing from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, if nuclear negotiations with the E3 countries fail. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated that the withdrawal from the treaty is an option if the trigger mechanism is activated, confirming that nuclear talks with the E3, that's France, the UK and Germany, will resume next Tuesday. Russian President Vladimir Putin has visited Sarov, a hub for nuclear weapons, where he toured an exhibition on scientific and educational infrastructure. Afterwards, Putin added that the nations are discussing joint projects in the Arctic and Alaska, signaling a potential thaw in diplomatic ties and a move toward cooperation in strategically significant regions. Meanwhile, Putin has expressed optimism about Russia-US relations, saying there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Speaking at a nuclear research center, Putin credited President Trump's leadership qualities for the potential improvement, citing their recent very good summit in Alaska. He also said that future progress depends on US leadership and that Russia is discussing potential joint projects with the US in the Arctic. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has affirmed he would not cede any territory to Russia. This declaration comes as President Trump shows frustration with Moscow, renewed his threat to sanction Russia if no progress is made on a peaceful resolution within 2 weeks. Zelensky continues to call for a meeting with President Putin, viewing it as the only way to end the war. Russia and Ukraine have issued conflicting reports on the state of the conflict. Russia's Ministry of Defense claimed its forces seized 9 settlements in Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk regions between August 16th and 22nd. In contrast, Ukraine's General Staff reported repelling 107 Russian assaults, with fierce fighting continuing. Russia also stated it launched precision strikes on Ukraine's defense and energy infrastructure, highlighting the ongoing intensity of the conflict. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has stated that Russia and Belarus will demand Ukraine not be used as a springboard for a future attack against them. The comments suggest a hardline stance in any future peace negotiations. The stance underscores the security concerns driving the ongoing conflict and highlights the conditions Russia and its allies may impose for a resolution. And that's almost all we have time for, but just time to recap the main headlines this evening. Egypt expresses its profound concern over the escalating reports of famine in the Gaza Strip. Families of the Israeli detainees call on Trump to order Netanyahu to end the war. And as we've just been hearing, Ukraine's president affirms he would not cede any territory to Russia. Well, thanks for watching this evening, and don't forget you can follow Q News on our social media platforms at Q News EGY. Have a lovely rest of your Saturday night.